control the vertical.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthologic with your host Mark. Today we're talking about an episode of The Outer Limits. This one's called A Feasibility Study. It's episode 29 of season 1. Now we're getting towards the tail end of season 1. Now there are 32 episodes in all. So after this one there's only 3 more episodes. And this one was directed by Baron Haskin, written by Joseph Stefano, the man himself, and cinematography by John Nicolaus. Production code was actually 9th, but it was aired 29th. I think that's the content made them want to put it a little later in the season once the show had been a bit better established, maybe. And it first aired on April the 13th, 1964. There's a few kind of familiar faces in it, but no one really outstanding. And this particular episode was actually remade as part of the 1997 or 96-97 revival of The Outer Limits. They actually remade it with the title Feasibility Study. Now this is an interesting one. Basically we see a typical suburban neighbourhood, but then there's a heavy fog. Essentially an entire 6 blocks has been lifted, completely teleported to another planet and shrouded in fog, so the inhabitants don't quite realise exactly what's going on initially. It's only when they venture out into the fog that sort of weird things happen. And in fact, many of the early scenes reminded me of Stephen King's story, The Fog, and the film based on that story in many respects. The fog was a creepy, weird place. As I say, they were transported to the planet Luminos, which apparently when this was written, it was actually written as Venus, but they wanted to make it a little more exotic and less familiar. And what we find is the inhabitants of Luminos basically as they get older, turn into a kind of rock. So the younger ones are actually mobile and more like humans, perhaps, but they gradually solidify. And it's a disease. It's not a genetic, it's a disease. And they're basically looking for other planets, other life forms and because of this issue, they really can't be as productive as society. So they're looking around for other planets to enslave, basically. And they lifted these 6 blocks off the Earth as a study to see if humans would make good slave stock. And it takes a while for to all sink in. The inhabitants are not convinced and don't quite realise what's happening. And there's some really eerie and interesting stuff going on in this episode. I quite like some of the imagery and the whole thrust of it. It was very downbeat, having said that, but I think that's the nature of it. Now, essentially, this is an allegory of slavery. That, I mean, in a science fiction format, that's what it is. That's what a lot of sci-fi, especially TV sci-fi, used to do. Talk about things in a way that related to what's happening in society without being on the nose, avoiding contentious issues and stuff like that. So the humans realise there may be and basically the threat is, if you don't serve us well, we'll touch you and you'll get the disease as well. That's the threat. And in fact, one person, the wife, there's also a sort of subplot of the wife not wanting to be with her husband anymore. She feels trapped. But that turns around when when they both become trapped, interestingly. So there is a subplot. Now, apparently the original script had children being transformed and pets and things, and the sponsors, or the TV body kind of representing the sponsors, felt that had to go right out, so they had to rewrite. So it was really only adults, which made it a little artificial. This was basically a 6-block area with no children, so it gave it a kind of weird feel. Doesn't help. In fact, I have to say, for most of the episode, you only kind of see two couples. They only really interact with other people near the end. Cost, I guess, things like that. But yeah, so it felt like it was only these two there, but in fact there was a whole 6 blocks of people, and they were met up in the church, and the priest was trying to reassure them. But in the end, it comes down to, well, we're not going home. We know we're not. We need to do something. If we don't do anything, if we just submit and become slaves, then all of humanity will also become slaves, because it would have proved their study. So one of them, or a few of them actually, have got the disease, one much worse than the other. The wife, who I mentioned, realises she catches it just by sharing a car with a teenage luminoid who's still in the early stages of turning, but just sharing the air with him, she caught the disease. So she knows it's fairly easily transmissible. And there's some interesting stuff. The whole scene where they're talking to the teenage one, he talks in a weird slow voice, and it was kind of eerie. And the whole look of the thing, there's a lot of fog, there's lots of weird characters moving around in the fog who are kind of rocky looking, let's put it that way. I really thought it was very solid. Anyway, at the end, I will spoil the ending. At the end, the people realise they don't want the rest of humanity to become slaves, so they all join hands, i.e. they're all catching the disease. They'd rather die of this disease than live as slaves and allow the rest of humanity to become slaves. It was kind of touching. And apparently there was a bit of contention about it, because the network was saying, well, this sounds like a suicide cult kind of movie. We do not want that. It's not movie, episode. We do not want that. But apparently when they showed the episode to people that make the decisions, they saw that it was moving and effective and worked dramatically, and lost their complaints. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, good one. A nice solid one. Not one I remember, and I have seen all these before, but yeah, I thought it was very solid, and interesting and well acted. Sam Wanamaker was like the main actor. I'm trying to think, I've definitely seen him in something else, but I can't think. I'll have a quick Google and see if I find him. He was an American actor, but he moved to the UK in the sort of to avoid the blacklisting of the McCarthy stuff. That might be why it looks familiar. If he's appeared in UK productions, that might be why it particularly looks familiar to me. But yeah, the more I look at him as an older man, the more I recognise him from stuff, but I can't put my finger on where I'm seeing him. Yeah, he was in Private Benjamin, is a movie he was in, to give an example. And he was also instrumental in trying to bring replicas of the Global Theatre, the Shakespearean Theatre, to the US. So he had a strong connection to Shakespeare. And in fact, he's got a blue plaque in the UK saying a visionary who recreated Shakespeare's Globe, which is a nice thing to have. Yeah, so overall, I thought a Feasibility study was a really interesting one. I really quite liked it. I thought it was a very solid one, considering it's towards the end of the run. That I don't feel like they're running out of energy on this series, so it's I'm quite pleased with that. I'll say no more. I just want to say before I go, is anybody out there?
I'm not.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to